Oyuki. So what I'm creating right now is a draft of my current project, the baskets, that I'm planning on taking to the Piggyback Fringe Festival in Wakefield, Quebec. For more information about this particular project, please go to the link in the description of this video. Now, right now I'm working on creating the script, and with these storytelling things, the way that I like to do this is to actually perform the script into a microphone. This is the microphone that I'm using. Or a microphone and a video, like what I'm doing. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating this video, and I'm going to be recording it on this flip cam. You can kind of see it in the back there. I'm going to record it on this flip cam, and then I'm going to put it on the internet to try to raise awareness for my project so I can get funding. Again, link in the description, Kickstarter. Now, I've already taken a swing at this. I've done a draft of the opening sequence, which is all about setting the stage. Today I'm going to try to forge ahead into some of the subsequent sequences, where what I really need to be working on is developing dramatic tension. I have that for the climax of the piece, but I still need to develop it more for some of the other parts. So, without further ado, I am going to go ahead and switch over to recording on audio. And actually, I don't think I need this audio. I think I have the flip camera's audio. Let's use that. So, I'm going to switch on over to that. So, the setting for this, there's going to be cords, like laundering cords, laundering lines, over the top of the playing space. And from them, they're going to be through, in the center, it's going to be set up like the start of a basket, of a traditional Karuk basket. And in the center, I'm going to hang some photographs of the family basket collection that this piece is about. I want you to imagine with me, start over. I want you to imagine a family with me sitting down at the breakfast table. The dad's over here. He's reading the front page of the newspaper, eating his grape nut flakes. Sister is here, hogging the funnies and just kind of picking at her grape nut flakes because she really doesn't like breakfast that much. And the brother is over here, engrossed in the culture and art section. The mom is already driving to work. She's a dental hygienist at a practice in the next town over. It's actually a natural choice for her as a job. One of her little sisters is a dental hygienist, and her dad actually was a dentist. Now, my mom, she's Karuk on her dad's side, a Karuk Indian. But she doesn't know this yet. She knows that she's native, but she thinks that she's Hupa because that's the closest reservation to where her family is from. She went up to see her great-grandma Elsie Young once when she was about 10. But other than that, her dad didn't talk about it. It was a big family secret for him, the Indianness. A big part of the reason was that he was a dentist in San Francisco in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And he grew up in the 30s through the 50s when the public discourse about Native people was incredibly negative. Now what I want to do at this part of the performance is I want to feel into the audience for the first image that pops into mind when they think of an Indian person. And I'd like to have images kind of anticipating things that they're going to say. It's going to be interesting because it's Canada, and I think different history and everything. But there are similarities. But I want to have images, things that I can relate to, images from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 30s, 40s, that whole time period. Actually, the earlier one, 30s through 50s. really negative Indian stereotypes, what the image of an Indian was back then. And as they come up, I want to go ahead and hang them from the clotheslines in such a way that they kind of block these baskets. So imagine I'm doing that pop culture Indian imagery from the 30s to 50s, asking the audience for what they think when they think Indian, and relate that back to the 30s and 50s imagery. This is to give the audience an impression of why my grandpa felt it was necessary to hide his indigenous heritage. So my mom knows that she's Indian, but she doesn't know what kind. She's always had an interest in her native heritage, though. So let's return to that house and have a look around. At first blush, it looks like any other house in Springfield, Oregon, a vibrant mix between suburbia and redneck logging town. But if we go into the family room and look at the bookcase, we'll see titles, Indian titles like Storm's Seven Arrows, and Stephen Dow Beckham's Indians of Western Oregon from her days teaching Indian Ed in Coos Bay. Got a note that says story here. I'm not sure if that's something I want to fill in or not at this point. My mom's teaching days in Coos Bay, teaching Indian Ed. Might be important because it is a link between knowing that she's Indian but not knowing what kind, and then this story which is about finding out what kind, finding out who her family is. So I have a note, story here. We also see books that she read to us, my sister and I, as we were growing up. 13 Moons on Turtle's Back, The Girl Who Loved Wild Horses. But elsewhere you won't see much sign of the Indian heritage. She has olive skin, black hair, but the dad, he's a German, and the sister and the brother, they look like him. So, the dad, he's reading the front page, getting caught up on the latest news. My sister's looking at the funnies but not laughing because they're really actually not that funny. And the brother, as we recall, is reading the culture and art section. On the front page is a photograph of a local powwow of a hoop dancer. The brother's fascinated by this. He thinks it looks pretty cool. So they finish breakfast and the dad loads them into the car. The brother gets in first, of course, he's the well-behaved child. The sister dilly-dallies, she has to be kind of pushed in, and the dad drives them to their middle school. They go in, they sit in class, and at lunchtime, the brother goes into the school library and goes to the card catalog. They still have those back in those days. He goes to I for Indian. No, that stuff's all about the Asian kind. So he goes to N, Native American. He gets an index card, he writes down all the call numbers. And he goes to a table and he brings the books with him. He sets them down and starts flipping through them while he eats his egg salad sandwich. While he was reading the newspaper that morning, the thought had struck him as he looked at the picture of the hoop dancer. Hey, I'm an Indian. I can do that. Now, as far as he knows, he's Hoopa. But how many of us have heard of the Hoopa tribe? That's right. This is going to be another thing that I feel into the audience. How many have heard of the Hoopa tribe? I'm betting not many, because it's a fairly isolated tribe, and especially in a middle school library, you're not going to find a whole lot of information about them. Who you are going to find a lot of information about are Plains Indians, Lakota, Dakota, Iroquois, and Southwest, Navajo, Hopi, which actually two of the letters are the same as two of the letters in Hoopa. It's a very similar word. So actually, that I ended up reading a lot about the Hopis because the name was actually pretty close. And I was reading about how they're great textile workers. So what I did was I found some yarn in my mom's crafts drawer. I found some yarn, and I tied some, I think 5 strands, 10 strands to the back of my chair. And I wove one of those hippie woven belts. So my mom saw me doing this, and what are you doing, Waylon? Well, I'm making a belt. I'm making an Indian belt. Belt. Why do you think it's an Indian belt? Well, It says in this book that the Hopi, they make these textiles, so I'm making a textile because I'm Indian. So I did that. I was reading tons and tons of books that I was checking out about Indians, just trying to figure out anything I could about what Indians do. I had no idea. And my mom thought to herself, I need to figure this out, if not for me, then for my kids. So she thought that we were Hupa, so she calls the Hupa tribe. And talks to somebody there on the phone, and they say, oh no, you're not Hupa. Elsie Young, your ancestor, she was Yurok. Oh, okay, says my mom, so she calls the Yurok tribe. Hello, I'm a descendant of Elsie Young, and I was wondering if you could tell me anything about her. No. You have to prove that you're her descendant. Why don't you call the BIA down in Reading? They'll help you. So, call the BIA. Hello, I'm a descendant of Elsie Young, and I'm trying to figure out anything I can about her. And the Yurok tribe recommended that I talk to you. She was Yurok. Well, we can't tell you anything, says the man on the phone, Lincoln Jackson. We can't tell you anything unless you prove that you're her descendant. And to do that, you're going to need to get your dad's birth and death certificate, his dad's birth certificate, and then that'll provide the links that you need, the documentation that you need to prove that Elsie Young is in fact your ancestor, and then we can talk to you about her. Okay, so, research time. Find my grandpa, her dad's birth certificate, his death certificate. He died before I was born. From there, found his dad's birth record. Actually, didn't have a birth certificate. He had a hospital record, a birth record. He was actually born in Takasufkara, the village, the ancestral village. No birth certificates there. But it tells us that he was in fact the son of P.L. and Elsie Young. So, submit this information to the BIA, and Lincoln Jackson comes back with an affidavit by Elsie Young to document that she was Indian or whatever. And on it says that she's not in fact Yurok. She's not Hupa either. She's Kaduk. So, now we're Kaduk. We know what tribe we are. And Lincoln Jackson tells us, actually, a collection of your great-grandma's baskets is in the Clark Museum in Eureka, California, and it's called the Hover Collection of Kaduk Baskets. Well, who's Hover? Well, I guess that's your relative. So, my mom gets in touch with the Clark Museum to find out about this Hover character. Well, it's Lee Hover. He's a starret, another branch of the perch family that we're from. And yes, he put these baskets into the museum to be on permanent display forever. Well, can you get us in touch with him? Well, you can write him a letter, care of us. Okay. So my mom writes a letter introducing ourselves and saying what we're up to, and she sends it on to the Clark Museum, who forwards it to Lee Hover, our relative that we just found out about. A month goes by. 2 months go by. No word. And my mom is thinking, well, I guess that's it. I guess that's as far as we get. We're Kaduk. And then one night we're sitting down to dinner and the phone rings. My mom answers it. Hello, this is Karen Link. Who is this, please? This is Lee Hover. So he and she have a long conversation. And next thing you know, we're driving down to the Humboldt Bay area to meet Lee Hover. We go out to dinner with him and his wife at the Samoa Cookhouse. I remember it. As I recall, it was a great atmosphere. It was a lot of old logging paraphernalia. Kind of cool. All-you-can-eat buffet. Anyways, I digress. First thing that Helen says to us is, what are your intentions? Because a lot of the other Sterretts, their branch of the family again, were not behind the decision to put those baskets into the Clark Museum. They thought that they should have been divided up amongst the family after Elsie died. And actually, funny story, Elsie Young is actually not part of the Sterrett clan. Sterretts are descended from her little sister. So, big family drama. What are your intentions? Well, we're outsiders. Our only intentions are to get to know our family. So, we check out, we're all right, and during the course of dinner, this is another thing that I should probably go and write more about, is this there's a little bit of drama about whether or not the baskets should go after Elsie and PL passed on. Mental note. So, during the course of the dinner, Lee and Helen, they're saying that they don't necessarily agree with how the Clark is maintaining the baskets. They're not happy with it. A lot of them aren't on display. The display itself is incredibly tacky. These things are being held up by fishing line. And these fluorescent lights are shining on them. So the next day we go to look at the baskets. They're beautiful, and I think maybe sometime around here I'm going to have to start taking down these pictures, the pictures of the bad stuff, and revealing the pictures of the baskets. Mental note. The baskets are beautiful, but there aren't enough of them on display. Like a third of the collection is on display. They should all be on display as stipulated in the contract between Lee and the Clark. But they're not. And true to Lee and Helen's word, the display is really, really terrible. It is. It's fishing line. These things are hung up on fishing line in this terrible glass case. Fluorescent lights shining on them. Just a really tacky hole-in-the-wall museum. So, I also have to say why the baskets went into the Clark. Mental note. So, we talk to the curator and we say, we need to go upstairs into the archives and make sure that the rest of the baskets are there. So, we go up and my dad has got the Hoover collection book out. Bear with me. He's got the Hoover collection book out. And he's going through and he's marking off baskets that are accounted for, baskets that are in the archives, baskets that are missing. One of these baskets is actually boxed up like it's going somewhere. Where are the baskets going? We know the Clark is in huge financial straits, and a lot of times museums, when they're having financial problems, they start selling off their stock. So as we're getting more and more and increasingly worried about this, and Grant Ferguson, of the board of directors, comes upstairs and he says, "What are you doing here?" "Well, we're making sure all the baskets are accounted for." "You can't be up here. You need to leave right now." Helen says, "We're not leaving until we've accounted for all of these baskets." And Grant, he storms off downstairs. And so we kind of hurry up. He said he's calling the police. And so we hurry up. And just as we finish going through the whole book, going through the whole catalog, Grant comes up with a member of the Eureka Police Department. Grant waves his finger at us and he says, "Arrest these people!" And there's these two 70-year-olds, Lee and Helen, two middle-aged folks, Mom and Dad. And then my sister and I were like 9 and 11 or however old. We're really young. So the police officer, he kind of looks ashamedly at his boots, and then he has us all leave the archives and he splits us up. And he takes us aside. He's already heard Grant's side of the story, so he takes us off to one side to get our side of the story. And it's mostly Helen and Lee talking. And my sister and I, we're kind of scared, but at the same time, we don't exactly know what's going on because we're 9 and 11. But while this is going on, Grant takes my mom back to his office. And he tells her, come back in a month. And we will have a private showing so that you can see all of these baskets. And so, we leave. And during this intervening month, we write letters to News from Native California, Attorney General, North Coast Journal, everybody we can think of, to tell them about the ridiculousness that's going on at the Clark Museum. Grant, I suppose, is getting the baskets back from whoever's mantelpieces they're sitting on. We come back in a month, and they have a showing. All the baskets are there. They're all accounted for. The display is still tacky. Since then, it's really improved. The display is still tacky, but all the baskets are there. A Yurok elder comes and he says a blessing over the baskets. And this is where I'm going to end it with kind of a poem/prayer for the continuity of the baskets. Because, yeah, looks like things are getting hairy with the Clark again. But, end with this poem that I still have to write. If you want to learn more about this project, please go to the link at the bottom in the description.